Welcome to Demonos Pod, episode 9. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Episode 9 with Tino and Matt. What's up, Matt?
It's going well, going good.
We're getting
And
ready
looking forward
to,
to one more week we start to get stats from spring training.
that's right.
Looking forward to
This
that.
episode, we are going to talk about our top 10 dynasty shortstop prospects. This was an exciting one. Wasn't an easy list to trim. Lots and lots of players that I would love to have on my fantasy teams. Probably a little bit of difference in our evaluation, so it should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get started. Should we
Okay,
start at the top?
sure.
You better have Volpe,
This may be the one we agree on, right? So
right? The only
yeah,
one.
so I have Anthony Volpe, New York Yankees,
Mhm.
5'11. He's listed 5'11, 180. Have you had any updates on that?
No, my guess is he's probably 195 at this point. It sounds
Um,
about right to me.
Yeah, so he grades out most consistently out of anybody here as a 60 hit, 60 power, 55 run, but 55 run is with excellent on base skills. So if we're not just looking at speed but on base skills, and base running skills, I should say, that should be 60 as well. So
Mhm.
666, 60, 60, 60. I love his swing. It's powerful and compact, and that goes right along with his pitch recognition, which is also the best in this class here. He's going to be in a powerful lineup. Probably will be leading off eventually. Um, he has solid contact. He's a little lower last year, but I think overall his career he's close to anywhere between 70 and 80% contact, always over 10% with walk rate. And his power went down a tad last year, but I think his slug was 450. But and his hard hit was never extremely high, but never extremely low because he's a hitter and he places the ball because of his pitch recognition and his control over the barrel. So yeah, so I have no problem putting him at one. He's high floor, high ceiling player. May not be like some crazy ceiling like Ellie De La Cruz, but still the consistency's there. He's going to be on a good club, and he's going to get, as far as fantasy baseball, just looking at value too, he's going to have that high value just because he is a Yankee.
Mhm. What do you see his peak home run and steal year being? I asked that because uh well, obviously we've talked about that being kind of the name of the game with fantasy, and he seems to me to have the highest potential of both. So what do you see his peak home runs and peak steals being in the major leagues?
I can see him being a 30-30 player
Mm-hmm.
at some point, not in the high 30s, but just getting over 30. Kind of his best year being 30-30, but that would go along with a solid batting average and a solid on base percentage as well.
Mm-hmm.
So especially with the new rules, this is the type of player the new rules help with these good base runners that have decent speed. They're going to take advantage of it, I think. And we finally got a picture of the bases, right? It's going to be fun. Before it was spring training, I used to just look at the stats, but I'm going to be watching all those games just to see what's going on with the bases and the shifts and everything.
Yep.
I'm really looking forward to next Friday.
They look like pizza boxes.
Yeah.
That's what Alex Cora said. So Volpe is also my number one. He's 22 years old. I had him as my number 2 prospect overall on my initial lists, and he'll probably end up somewhere in the top 3. He may still be 2. He did have a little bit of a slump to begin the year last year. He was missing a little bit on kind of sliders low and outside of the zone. That's why a lot of his numbers went down. But he did adjust to that, which I really like a lot. The fact that he can make adjustments on the fly as he did. So he made a swing change over COVID. He went from being kind of what's the word? Kind of a balanced, slightly above average tools across the board, level swing, to coming out of COVID with a much more loft in his swing, looking for power, and really did elevate his prospect status because he became a potential 30-run home run hitter instead of 15 to 18. As you said, it's more speed and athleticism, or I mean intelligence and athleticism over speed on the base paths, but I have him as an elite offensive player in the infield for a long, long time. His tools for me, I had a 60 hit as you did. I think that the hit is a lot about hand-eye coordination. I don't think his average is going to read 60 hit because he does try to loft the ball so much, but I actually have his power at 65. I think that he's such a coordinated hitter and so explosive when you watch his swing that I think he's a touch above 60, which could, in my opinion, lead to close to 35 home runs. He has that kind of ability. I have 60 run as opposed to 55, but I think I incorporated some of the base path intelligence into that run. It's not just a pure speed rating for me. And then 60 discipline, as you stated, he has historically been in double-digit walks. So what does that say for me? Potentially 275, 360, 525 with 100 runs and maybe even 100 RBIs in a great offense and 30 plus homers and steals. That's a peak year, but I do think he has that kind of elite superstar potential. I love him. Watching his swing, there's a lot of kind of a squatty load and he explodes at the ball, but his bat is so quick, right?
Mhm.
Lightning fast bat. I do wonder if he stays at short. We've talked about Peraza a bit. And there is questions about whether Volpe would be better at second or third. If he's at third, it's because he has a really strong arm. If he's at second, it's because he would probably have above average range as a second baseman. I see him even as a Gold Glove second baseman, whereas he's more of a league average shortstop. But you know what? With those kinds of stats, if we're talking about a floor of 2020 and a ceiling of like 35, 35 even, second, third, short, I really don't care. For roster construction, I would care at second just because I love Tamar Johnson and have him. But I love Volpe. I think Volpe is one of the top three fantasy prospects in the game. And if you can get him now, I would go out and find him. And I don't see a whole lot of risk with him other than, if he might have a little more swing and miss on an elite slider than we would want. And because he hits so many fly balls, his average could fluctuate year to year, right? If he had a 240 year with 30 home runs, it wouldn't surprise, but it also wouldn't surprise to see him hit 285. As we were describing him, I thought of my major league comp for him is actually Marcus Semien, because Semien puts up a ton of homers and steals. He has that swing that's looking to loft the ball to left field, and he's not going to hit for high average, but I do think that both of them could if they were to level out their swing a little bit. So I think he's an even better Marcus Semien for me.
Yeah, I wish we had and hopefully this starts coming this year. I wish we had spray charts for minors as far as where their hits went. But Roto is listing him at 40 pole, 31 center, 28 oppo. So that's a nice balance there. But I want to see where his oppos are going, especially given Yankee Stadium.
Right.
As right field there. He not only has the advantage of the pole power, but can he push them out to right as well?
Right. One other thing to add with Volpe, I think that there's, we saw with Joey Gallo going to New York, there was some people point to the pressure of playing in New York as part of the downfall of Gallo while he was there. And while I don't like to put a ton of weight into that sort of thing, I do think that the pressure of being a Yankee is real. And I think that works in Volpe's favor. Any interview you watch, you see how charismatic he is. You see how confident he is. He's also from New Jersey and was drafted out of New Jersey as a high schooler. And so he understands what he's walking into, right? He understands the pressures of New York. Now, if he doesn't hit really well out of the gates, there might be a little bit of concern. But I think that I would rather take the player who's been in the pressure-packed environment and understands what it is, rather than the one who's coming in from the middle of nowhere and is kind of shell-shocked by the intensity of the New York market. So again, Volpe is my one. He's going to fall somewhere in the top three for fantasy prospects overall. There is still a little bit of risk, but I do think that realistically, we're talking about a 25 annual shortstop for the next probably 6 to 8 years, which is worth a ton in fantasy, as we know. Who's your number two?
My number two has to do with pedigree and what Baltimore's doing. So I have Jackson Holiday at 2'6'1", 175 listed. He has the best contact. We do have limited numbers on him, but it's no surprise looking at his swing. It's so smooth, natural. He is like seems effortless, right? And the ball pops off there. Great hand-eye, great body control, especially with the barrel. So I could see him as being an elite hitter with, again, decent speed, kind of the base running skill, not necessarily the elite speed. His power, that's what I'm going to be looking closely at this year, seeing where that comes. Baseball, when that comes, I should say. Baseball America has him at 60, 55, 55. And if I went ahead and added the discipline piece, I think he would have the best discipline here, probably between 60 and 70 for me. He's already showing it with, his limited action from last year. So yeah, he's all these guys, there's nobody that really, I maybe have the top three in the same tier. Or I would probably even just have Volpe and Holiday in the same tier because they have a lot more speed than my third person. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing him evolve as a hitter.
So Holiday I really enjoyed watching his film, and it's interesting because I think we came to a lot of the same conclusions. I actually do have a 70 discipline on Holiday, as you said. My question with him is what I saw, and this is, of course, we're talking about a 19-year-old, but what I saw was hit over power currently, right? I saw a really elite bat to ball and hand-eye coordination. I saw his wrists break a little bit in his swing, right? As if he doesn't quite have the physical strength yet to not break his wrists as he was swinging. I don't think that will continue. Look at his dad. His dad was pretty ripped. I would assume that Holiday gets bigger. If he does get bigger, though, is he going to stay as short? I think that is one question to ask yourself. If he's built like his father, right? Holiday got bigger as he got older. And if he's built like Matt Holiday was not built like a shortstop. So I do think there's some question if he moves to third base or not. That's not going to keep me from ranking him second as you did. I think that the hand-eye coordination is going to lead to really high averages. I don't know I guess the question with him again is power. And so is he a 55 power or is he a 60 power? And the difference between those two in my mind is he a, kind of a perennial 22 to 25 home run hitter, which is very good. Or does he have the potential to get to 30, 33, 35 home runs, which makes him elite? I don't know the answer to that. What I saw in his swing and what I saw in his build is more of that low to mid 20s home run hitter and not the 30 home run hitter. And I saw more of what I have written is that he's a smooth player, but that he's silky rather than explosive. And that his body frame or that his wrists and swing read 55 power for me and not 60. Whereas when you watch Volpe, it's compact and explosive, right? It's quick. His bat is through the zone and it's explosive and you can hear that loud contact. Whereas Holiday for me has a much more of a smooth swing. So I have his risk as low. The question was, is his explosion there to get him to 30 home runs or 20 steals? And then I'm not sure, but that he, as a 19-year-old, he has an incredibly high floor already. He would bottom out as a 290, 20 home run, 10 steal third baseman, which fantasy-wise is very, very good. I just don't know that he has quite the same ceiling with regards to power or speed that Volpe does. And that's why I have him at 2 instead of 1. I also think he could be a better real life player than a fantasy player. I think Volpe is the opposite, where he may not be quite as good of a real life player because of his defense and his lower average than he would be a fantasy player. So I love both players. I think Holiday can be very, very good. I actually think his highest end potential, it might be even higher than Volpe. I have questions as to whether he's going to reach it. So Jackson Holiday is my number 2.
My comp for him, since you do Family Guy comps, I'll go
Mhm.
outside the sport here. My comp for him is like a Payne Stewart in golf, before he passed. The smooth
Sure.
swing. He doesn't like nail the ball, but he's just damn consistent. It's a beautiful swing, right?
Right.
So I think the sense of kind of the natural real life baseball player is
Mhm.
who he is. Now I have a question for you about this though. How would you compare him with Gunnar, and where would you place them as far as ceiling goes?
I think Gunnar is more explosive. I
Mhm.
would say that Gunnar is closer to Volpe than he is to Holiday, in that Gunnar has more explosiveness. He has more. He's a little bit more built. I think he's a little faster. I think he's got a little more power, but his swing is not nearly as pretty. Um, same thing with Volpe versus Holiday, right? I think Volpe is more explosive. Swing isn't quite as pretty. Uh, not as smooth. So I think there, from a statistical standpoint, I think there are similarities between Holiday and Gunnar. How they get there is different, and I would say Holiday has a uh, plus to double plus hit tool
Mhm.
and probably plus power, above average to plus power, whereas Gunnar has an above average hit tool but not a plus hit tool, maybe plus, but has plus to double plus power. So for me, that's where the differences lie.
Mhm.
All right, are we done with Jackson Holiday?
Yep.
Who's number three?
Number three for me is Marcelo Meyer. Um, and people say Mayer Meyer, but I think it's Meyer, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay. So he's 6'3", 188, has the pedigree. I think we've talked about him plenty on this show already. Grew up in baseball, kind of had the training from youth in San Diego and the youth clubs there. Where he compares to somebody like Holiday, he does have that cool left hand swing, but he hits the shit out of the ball, which I'm impressed by. Why he's lower than Holiday for me is BA graded him at a 40 speed, which isn't necessarily ideal. Even, I kept wondering why some scouts have wondered if he's going to move off shortstop. He has a great glove, but is he rangy? And seeing video of him, he just kind of seems average, below average when it comes to ranginess and speed. So that's a caution there. But I have him at 60 hit, potentially 60 power, but BA has him at 55 right now for power. His hard hit rate was extremely high for who he was around, for his level, in minors. I think it was at
High A. He's A
what's
and
that?
high. A and
Yeah,
high A.
yeah. Um, his slug was close to 500. It was 489. He did have some issues last year with injury, so that kind of plays into it. But I think he could be a solid kind of a shortstop, third baseman that doesn't necessarily have the speed, kind of like what Machado turned into. I'm not using a Machado comp here, but in the sense of having that hit and power without the speed. So yeah, I think he's another high floor player, and I look forward to seeing him where he starts, if he's going to be high A, double A, and how he moves through the system.
I bet he starts at double A. So he's my number four. I agree with most everything you said. I have his hit 60, power 60, run 45, discipline 55. It's interesting because, a lot of the criticism of him was that his swing plane was a little bit flat. I didn't see that. I actually saw quite a bit of lift in his swing. On his load, he brings the ball or brings the bat perpendicular to the dirt. And
Hmm.
so from here, you have to you kind of naturally have to come up a bit. And that's what I saw from his swing. In my notes, I also have that he's a bit heavy footed. And so he didn't look nearly as muscular as Jackson Merrill did to me, but he looked slower, right? When you watch Jackson Merrill, there was more explosion in everything that he did. That said, uh, Marcelo Meyer hits the ball really hard. It's I wouldn't call it a beautiful swing, but I do like there's something to it that's really attractive. And, you know, 290, 293, 80, 500 is I think pretty realistic for him. Again, like as you said, the only real big knock is, you know, you might take a zero at steal with speed and steals from him in the middle of his career at shortstop. And if speed and power is a priority for you at every position, if you're building your team in that manner, he's going to be a four tool player for you and not a 5-tool player. And there is that risk that he does move off of short. Some people have mentioned second. I think he'd be a third baseman if he moved. What I have in the end of my notes as far as risk, as I said, he could be a left-handed Xander Bogaerts for the Red Sox, which is an above-average fantasy shortstop who leaves you wanting for just a wee bit more. And that is the way I would feel about him, right? I'd be really, he's, you know, maybe he's a left-handed Carlos Correa. It's that type of player where it's a high average, very good OPS, could pop somewhere between, you know, 22 and 30 home runs, hitting in the right lineup, hitting third or fourth. He could drive in 100 runs. So a very good player, a fantasy starter, right? An above average fantasy starter, but I don't see the elite talent from him because of the lack of speed. I also just worry about slow players becoming not as effective or as good at an early age, right? If he gets any slower than a 45 run, then a lot of his ground balls are going to be outs, right?
Yeah.
A lot of his singles are not going to turn into doubles, and then you're looking at a different sort of player. So down the line, dynasty wise, I do try to look for players that have speed, knowing that they may slow down. But we'll get to on my list, Mason Wynn, right? Who I love. And part of why I love him is he's so damn fast that singles become doubles, right? Doubles become triples. So even if he hits 18 home runs, he might have 14 triples. And his OPS might be 850 because of it. So we can talk about him later, but that's one of the knocks for me with Meyer.
Yeah, it's appropriate. He's on, in our league, he's on Beer's Good Food because he always likes the slow power hitting players.
Sluggers.
Yeah, he has Muncy at second. So
that's funny. So my 3, I'm guessing, is your 4. I have Jackson Merrill at 3. Is he?
Yeah, I remember I had Merrill at second.
So
oh,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. So we don't have to rehash him too much. I dove deeper into Merrill this time because I have him listed as a shortstop. 20 years old, 6'3", 195, drafted at the bottom of the first round by the Padres in 2021 out of Maryland. Man, so looks like an athlete, well built, short stride, really short, quick swing for a left-handed hitter, which I liked a lot. Missed 45 games last year due to a fractured wrist and a hamstring injury, open stance, level bat. The kind of player I like, right? Even if, so I like speed, I like power. He's not that fast. I have his speed as a 50, but it's functional speed, but he's twitchier than Meyer is, right? I think he has more explosion than Meyer is. And elite bat to ball, hand-eye coordination, his contact rate, not his overall contact rate last year was close to 90%, but not in the Keibert Ruiz sort of way, right? Not in the way where he's getting a lot of soft contact, more with more authoritative contact. He hit 339 with the 906 OPS last year over rookie and A-ball. So to me, the power is not quite there yet. There were a ton of ground balls, almost a 60% ground ball rate. But the expectation is that he's a good enough student of the game and has the type of swing where they can add loft. So if you're talking about a 300 hitter with 25 home runs and 15 steals, hitting in the middle of a really good lineup, which we anticipate San Diego having over the course of the next 5 years or so, I love him. I don't have him above Holiday. I think Holiday is a slightly his hit tool is a little bit better. And I think the power and speed of Volpe is slightly above Jackson Merrill, but I think he's right. He's just a half notch below. And because of the speed and the twitchiness, I have him above Marcelo Mayer. All right. Who is your number 4?
My number 4, and this moves around a lot, but as far as these middle players, I have 3 of them. four of them together, but I
Mhm.
did put and I know you probably have him at outfield. I did put Ellie De La Cruz at 4.
Mhm.
As far as ceiling, he has the highest ceiling of any player on this list, and I would argue as far as more ceiling than any player coming up on the prospect list
Mhm.
overall.
Mhm.
Again, the concern, I think we've talked plenty about this, is his 66% contact rate, which does not translate very well into the majors. Even if you look back at players that have come up, that have struggled with swing and miss, their contact rates in the minors have been higher than Ellie's.
Mhm.
Um, BA, because of this, has him at 40 hit. But at the same time, he's at 70 power and 70 run as far
Mhm.
as his athleticism. His raw power and speed is the best of anybody in shortstop or on the board of prospects.
So he's the switch hitting Lewis Brinson. Is that what you're saying?
He hits the crap out of the ball when he does make contact. His slug was at 586. His batting average was decent. His on base was low. He was 8% walk rate. He did up that a little bit in winter ball. So he's one to watch very closely to see how he's improving with that in spring training. So he's going to be interesting one to watch there. And yeah, so and from what I've heard, he's still staying on, still clinging on to shortstop. Obviously, with who's coming up with the Reds, we see how long that lasts. But he reminds me of O'Neal Cruz. Like we thought Cruz would be in right field by now, right? And he's still at shortstop. So I could see them still sticking with that until other opportunities come up.
Right. I do know that De La Cruz wants to be a shortstop and he's fighting hard to stay there. I think the difference between the two players is that that Cruz is competing with like Lever Cabrera or Peguero and Rodolfo Castro and that sort of player, whereas De La Cruz was competing with, Noelvi Marte, Matt McLean, and I think most importantly, Edwin Arroyo.
Yeah.
So I don't see him. I don't see any way he stays at short.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. I think the swing and miss is too much to stomach for me, at least from a dynasty perspective. What it would cost to acquire him at this point in time, based on his season last season, is not worth the risk. Especially if you can find a player who's 90% of De La Cruz's production, without that type of swing and miss risk.
And
He is
especially in points leagues, right? There where
right.
strikeouts count against you. So
Right.
he already is devalued in points league because of this concern.
Right. I have him as an outfielder, as you said. We can talk about him in the next episode, but yeah, a little bit scary for me. My profile, I can't take that kind of risk as far as the prospect capital that it would take to acquire him.
Mm-hmm.
I did draft him in one of our dynasty leagues, but I just felt like it was kind of time for him to come off the board, and I was willing to take the risk at that particular point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But I may look to
And
trade
he's
him.
so fun to watch, right? So I'm cheering for him, and that's the hard part about these podcasts, because all these guys, these are their dreams, right? And we're just, I'll just speak for myself. I'm somebody who's not skilled at this, right? And looking at people that are very skilled at performing, and
Right.
that's why it's fun to be a fan, right? So even if there's kind of these downgrades, I'm still cheering for a guy like him, unless I'm playing that person in head to head.
Right.
Right. I hope he has a shitty league, but yeah, he's I think even in somebody in one of our other leagues posted a picture they took of him in spring training last
Right.
year, right?
Right.
Just ripping a ball. It's just so fun to watch. So
Right.
so I hope he does succeed. And there is that link with Eric Davis as well. He's kind of Davis's protege, and Davis speaks a lot about him in the Reds organization. So so I'm always rooting for these athletic speed power guys coming up, just because we grew up loving guys like Eric Davis.
Right. Speaking of, who's your number 5?
My number 5 is Jordan Lawler when we come to athletes. Yeah, so he's plus speed. He's one of the faster players outside of De La Cruz on the board here. There's decent power, more power than I think people anticipated coming up. BA has him at 60 hit. I have him closer to 55 hit. I have a lot of questions about that. He's not hitting the ball hard.
Mm-hmm.
And his slug's at what 509. So he had that great start last year in the minors and then kind of tailed off. And then he had that started in Arizona Fall League and then got hurt. So and injury is an issue with him as well, because when he came into the Arizona system, that was he was still recovering. So yeah, I have him at 5. He's kind of a wait and see athletic type of guy. I think some boards like Baseball America push him up because he does have that defensive skill as well. So which doesn't play in fantasy baseball at all. So he's a wait and see for me. I don't own him. I don't think in any leagues.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't sell high here, but I would hold and I wouldn't buy when it comes to fantasy baseball.
So I have Lawler at 6. I echo most everything you said. I probably feel a little stronger about some of the criticisms. He was drafted 6th overall in 21 by the Diamondbacks out of Dallas. He's 20 years old. I had him at number 14 overall in my initial offseason prospect rankings. I anticipate him being much, much lower than that, probably in the 40s would be my assumption. When I re-rank, so he had a shoulder injury that ended his 21 after 5 at-bats. He was hurt this year as well. What I saw was, well, for one, I see swing and miss issues, right? And I think that's always scary for me.
Yeah, he's at 70% contact.
Mm-hmm. I do like that he can inside out. He can inside out pitches, right? There's some skill in his hit tool that you don't see from some of the others. I understand that his power speed he was drafted with that power speed label. I don't know that he has quite the explosiveness of a Mason Wynn. And I don't know that he has the skill to utilize all of it in the way that Anthony Volpe does. So my criticism of him is that he's power speed, but not, in my mind, not elite. But he doesn't have close to the hit tool of a Marcelo Mayer or a Jackson Holiday or a Jackson Merrill, right? And so he's kind of stuck in the middle where I don't see anything that I really love from him. He's also a risk to stay at short because of his arm. His arm may take him to second base, which might actually be good for his fantasy potential. Just because second base
is great range over there as well.
Right. So I don't see the ceiling for him. What I see is a 275 hitter with maybe an 800 plus OPS. And I think he can reach 20 home runs and 20 steals. But I would be, not that I'd be surprised, but I think that's kind of the top end for him, right? It's not 30-30. It's not even 25-25 for me. So I have his hit and his power as a 55 and his speed as a 60. I understand that he's probably a lot faster than Volpe, but I think the way it translates in baseball is very similar to Volpe, even though he has an extra physical gear. What I have in my notes is with Lawler is the arrow is pointing down, in my opinion, and I would try to find somebody who really does value him incredibly high. One other thing people have pointed to is that he did play over 4 levels last year, and that's something that people are pointing to as a positive. I think that for me, the reason why he was in rookie and A-ball was because he was hurt, not because he progressed that quickly. And I also think that the Diamondbacks they want him to be great. And so they're trying to push him. They were really aggressive with his promotion, saying that I don't know that it was as much warranted as the Diamondbacks kind of wish casting onto Lawler. So that's not to say he's not a good prospect. I have him at number 6. I think he's the end of this tier for me, right? If I had a second tier of shortstop prospects, he's end of the second tier. My number 7 is not close to the prospect that Lawler is. I just don't see him in the same light that I think some others do.
Mhm. Where do you see him batting in Arizona? So if we assume that Carroll takes over one, and then the great hitter like Moreno is two, where would he?
I think Moreno moves down if he shows any semblance of power.
You
My
think?
guess is it would be something like, I don't know who the left-handed batter is hitting 3, but it'd be Carroll, something like Carroll, Lawler, someone, Moreno hitting 4, and having a cleanup hitter that's not a stereotypical power hitter, but more of a hitter to keep the players moving around the bases, right? That's what I would do. And I do think Moreno will see some of that power. I don't think Moreno is a 2 because I don't know if he has the athleticism for me to get around the bases. I would much prefer Lawler there. So, Jordan Lawler with 600 plate appearances is going to be a productive fantasy player. And you could even make the case for me of Lawler over a Marcelo Mayer in fantasy because Lawler gives you steals. He might give you less average, less runs, less homers, less RBIs, but still be of similar value because he provides you 20 steals and Mayer gives you 3, especially in Roto.
Yeah, and he does have a decent eye too, so he will get on base.
But watch the swing and miss, right? Watch the swing and miss. And the arrow might go up for him if he has another full season. Say he has a full season in Double-A this year, or double and triple, and he is 25. I could see that happening. At that point in time, you've got to elevate him. But for me right now, he's 6. Let's take a quick break and we will come back with my number 5 and then move on to the next tier.
All right.
All right. My number 5, shortstop. I'm guessing he's somewhere between 7 and 8 for you, is Mason Wynn.
All right. He's 6 for me.
Sweet.
Wait, yeah, he's 6 for me. Yeah.
21 years old, 5'11", 180, drafted in the 2nd round, 54th overall by the Cardinals out of Texas in 2020. Last year in high A and Double-A, in 550 plate appearances, he had 91 runs, 12 homers, and 43 stolen bases. He did walk 11.5% of the time, struck out 21% of the time, and had an OPS of 832. First thing anybody talks about with Mason Wynn is his arm, which is not fantasy relevant, but he throws 100 miles an hour. He was a 2-way player when he was drafted. When you watch him play, the quick twitch and explosiveness jumps off the page. I think he's a uber elite athlete, right? You could see him playing cornerback or tailback in football. You could see him being a point guard in basketball who can dunk, right? He's got that kind of athleticism. I love him. Hits with the close stance, not a lot of knee bend, not a ton of weight shift either, just kind of an average stride. And he's got so much power in his hips and so much torque that he's able to hit the ball out. He's trying to kind of get out in front of the pitch. But what I see is, so he, as I said, he had 12 home runs last year and 550 plate appearances. I think he's only going to get stronger, at least for the next couple of years. I think, say he gets to 18 to 20 home runs, he's going to steal 30, 40 bases, right? And he is also going to hit balls in the gap. And anything in the gap for him is a threat of a triple. He's got 65, maybe even 70 speed. So Mason Wynn is, for me, a player on the ascent. I have him over Lawler. I think that if he realizes some more of the power, fantasy-wise, in my mind, he starts to threaten Marcelo Mayer, right? Because of the 30, 40 steal potential. I also trust the Cardinals organization to develop him. I love him as a player. I think he's a great upside play. I could see, as I said, OPS will come from extra base hits as much as it'll come from home runs. And he's a tremendous, tremendous athlete. As I said, he's my number 5. I had him at 20 overall in my initial prospect rankings. And I know that was really aggressive, but there was a reason why I had him that high. And I just think athleticism and quick twitch gives you the potential for elite if he can continue to develop his power and hit. So currently he is 55 hit, 55 power, 65 speed, 55 discipline for me. But that hit and power over the next couple of years could get to 60 and 60.
You think his power could get to 60?
I do. If you watch his swing and you see how much torque he has in his hips, I think he's got the physical strength and the explosiveness to hit 25 home runs. I really do. I don't know that it will happen, right? I'm not predicting that it'll happen, but the physicality is there to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
He's so a good player to compare him to within this pool is an Ezekiel Tovar, right? So I have Tovar down at 9, and Tovar's a player that a lot of people are high on, and I think Tovar's hit tool certainly currently is much better than Mason Wynn, right? Probably a full grade higher than Mason Wynn, but he doesn't have the explosiveness. He doesn't have the same athleticism, right? He doesn't have the same build. You look at Mason Wynn and you see, even at 5'11", you see more broad shoulders, strength, muscle, twitch. You see Ezekiel Tovar, and he's shaped almost the reverse of Wynn, right? Where you can see his thighs getting heavy, and it won't impact his range much, but you can see that happening. You just don't see the twitch from him. And in fantasy, I err on the side of that sort of athleticism. And especially if the hit tool is average to above average already, which I believe it is. So I love him. I still consider keeping him in our hybrid keeper league. I think that he becomes a 2020 shortstop and just below maybe a second tier shortstop moving forward, where you're going to weigh, do I want Mason Wynn in his 2020, or do I want a Xander Bogaerts, Marcelo Mayer type who is better with 4 tools, but not going to give me the steals. And that will be a debate for a long time, I believe, between those two.
Yeah, I have them back to back. So I have Wynn at 6 and Tovar at 7. And I was debating on who's going to be 6 and who is going to be 7. I went with Wynn because of two reasons. He's faster. I like you said, I like his athleticism more. And then the second reason is organization. With the Cardinals, they're going to they're solid all around with especially with pitching, but their org knows how to get the best out of players, even like a Lars Nootbaar, right? So they're going to develop him well. They're planning around him.
Right.
The interesting thing about both Wynn and Tovar, if I go through my list from Volpe all the way down to De La Cruz 1 through 5, there's questions about where they're going to end up. Wynn is going to be at shortstop. He's a pure shortstop. Tovar is going to be at shortstop as well, pure shortstop. So that's why I like them both, and I put them in the same range. I'm not convinced about Wynn's power yet, but I'll be open to that. He did have a power surge last year, so he was tapping into that, and again, the Cardinals are going to very much know how to develop his talent.
Well, think about this with Wynn too. So he's 20, right?
And
he was a two-way player in high school, and they didn't necessarily know if Mason Wynn was going to be if he was going to be a pitcher or a hitter. Right? So how long has he really focused on hitting? Not that long. And I like a player, the same way we talk about Cam Collier being so young, I think the same thing applies to Mason Wynn, because he hasn't been a full-time hitter very long. So I expect a lot, like the hit tool and the power, to potentially continue to develop over time, right? At a different pace than we might see some other players. So he turns 21 on March 21st. There is a decent likelihood he is the starting shortstop for the Cardinals in August or September, especially given their depth chart, right? So you're talking about him being 5 years away from his peak as an incredibly physical athlete playing in an organization that can teach, right? Having not had the same sort of developmental time with his bat in the way that most players have. I see so much upside with Wynn. I think that Wynn has the potential, honestly, to move up to like just below Volpe as far as the physical tools, the explosiveness, all the things I just talked about. So I'm super high on him. I'll probably keep him around 20 overall as I had coming into the offseason. I love him. I absolutely love him. I think he's a great buy low. And based on my rankings too, if I had the choice between Wynn or Lawler, I'm taking Wynn. And I'm probably one out of maybe 10 or 20 guys who would take Wynn over Lawler at this point in time.
It is interesting on the EVs, which he gets, people comment on, but then Baseball America has him at 48. He's at 85 EV. But if you go up the list, you have Evan Carter, but he's big build. He's at 85 EV. That's going to go up for sure. But then you hit the shortstops like Tovar. He's at 85 and he's ranked 17. What's the difference there, right?
Right.
You go to Lawler at 13 and he's at 83 EV. So how can you knock Wynn's EV, who has a decent hit as well, when you have those other players ranked so high that also have questions as far as how hard they're hitting it.
Right. I would also say, as I have in the past, go watch him swing. Watch him swing the bat. Watch him run. Look at his arm and tell me that that's going to be a low EV player. I think you can surmise from the athleticism in other parts of his game that if you think the swing isn't fast enough now or powerful enough now, it will become that because of the type of athlete that he is, right? You don't have 100-mile-an-hour arm and 60 speed and not be able to swing the bat hard, right? Sometimes those players can swing the bat hard, but they can't make contact. That's not Wynn's problem. So actually, I just saw Tim McCarver passed away at 81. That's sad. But yeah, Mason Wynn's my 5. He's 20 right now. He's going to stay probably somewhere between 15 and 25 for me overall. I'm considering keeping him in our hybrid keeper league. I love him. I love him. We should talk about Tovar since we both mentioned him. I have him at 9. You have him at 6.
Go ahead and start with Tovar. I got something on the stove I got to take off.
Go ahead. So Ezekiel Tovar, 21 years old, right-handed shortstop prospect for the Rockies. 2022, he played in AA, AAA, and had a few at-bats in the majors. He's listed 6 feet 162. I'm guessing he's closer to 6 feet 190 at this point. Was signed in 2017 out of Venezuela by the Rockies for $800,000. Good hit tool. Not an elite athlete in my mind. Last year in double and triple, in 318 plate appearances, he hit 319 with a 927 OPS. It's why you saw him on some boards getting all the way up to top 20 prospect status. Did have 14 homers and 17 steals. I wouldn't say he's maxed out athletically, but he's close when I look at him. When I was looking at video, I don't see a ton of projection for him. So overall, what I see in Tovar is a quality hitter whose body is probably not going to get much stronger, who has a above average hit tool, but doesn't take walks, right? So high contact, lower walk rate, not going to find that much more power other than maybe a swing change or a little bit more coordination. So I just don't see his ceiling as quite the same as the other players we talked about, right? I don't know that he's ever going to get past 20 home runs, and I don't know that he's ever going to get past 20 steals, which makes him dependent upon average, which we all know can be volatile based on luck and shifts and all the other sorts of things. And then, it does help him that he plays in Colorado, but I also don't trust Colorado's ability to get the most out of their players. So is he a 300 hitter? I think he can be, right? But he's probably a 300 hitter with an 8% walk rate and a lower slug. He's hitting at the top of that lineup. He has 300 hitter, 100 run potential, but then you're looking at probably 60 RBIs. You're also looking at 15 home runs and maybe 10 steals if you're lucky. So
where do you have his power?
I have his power as a 50.
Okay.
I've hit 60, power 50, speed 50, discipline 50.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know that there's more power coming, honestly, especially watching his swing.
Mm-hmm.
You know who he reminded me of? Just kind of physically and with the swing a little bit was Gene Segura.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a bad player. Gene Segura is a fringe starter at second or at short in fantasy and has been for a long time. But he's not a prospect that I'm going to invest tremendous capital in, or that I'm going to have on my team as my shortstop of the future. I don't
Mm-hmm.
see that kind of quality in him. He's probably that player that is a good fantasy starter that people are going to like, but is not a fantasy starting shortstop on a championship fantasy team. That's how
Mm-hmm.
I view him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to add? One other thing to add with Tovar is that I do think he's a 600 plate appearance shortstop because he does play um, almost elite defense. I'd say it's a plus defensive shortstop. And if that's the case, he's going to get a lot of plate appearances. So he does have the potential to accumulate counting stats in a way that some of the other players may not. So that is something to keep in mind as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he's definitely one of those players to be cautious about when it comes to rankings, because sites that aren't necessarily concerned about fantasy baseball only are going to bump him because of his defense.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my comp. Let's see if this. So I'll give you the stats of this player. So this player in his third year hits 280, 303 on base percentage, 377 slug, 680 OPS. Maybe his OPS will be a little higher than that. 22 walks, 87 strikeouts. So this player has decent contact. 34 steals, 11 caught, 34 maybe a little high, but this player was a great base runner. This player maxed out at 9 home runs. Tovar maybe has more power, but this player had 13 triples, 31 doubles, 647 at bats,
Was this
9
last year?
runs. This is Gary Templeton.
That's funny.
Yeah, great defensive shortstop, right? I think he was traded for the Wizard of Oz, right?
Ozzie Smith, yeah.
Yeah, so he was 5'11, 175, shortstop. Solid shortstop, great real life player, but not
Mhm.
necessarily somebody you want in fantasy, right?
Right. Could Tovar be a shortstop on a World Series winning team? For sure.
Yeah, he can win some
100%.
gold gloves too, right?
Much rather have him than JP Crawford, as much as I love JP Crawford. But when we're talking fantasy and you're talking power and speed, and you don't want to have deficiencies, I think that Tovar's not, for me, he's not my guy.
Mm-hmm.
I have him at 9. I could make the case for players being above him as well.
Mm-hmm. So who did you have at 6?
So I had Lawler at 6.
Lawler at 6.
The
Okay, and then
top 6 were Volpe at 1, Jackson Holiday at 2, Merrill at 3, Marcelo Meyer at 4, Mason Wynn 5, Lawler 6, and then Tovar down at 9. So 7, if we're ready to move there, for me is Christian Hernandez, shortstop prospect for the Cubs, 19 years old, 6'2", 175, was signed in the January international signing period by the Cubs in 21 for $3 million out of Dominican Republic. I'm probably high man on Hernandez. I had him at 30 in my initial ranks. He was a prospect that got some buzz going into 2022, and he's kind of fallen off the map with a lot of folks going into 23. I actually think let's have a quick conversation about that. We talked about this in the past a little bit, but he is an example of a player who everybody loved. He was 18, scouts loved him, stat heads loved him. People called him a baby A-Rod, comped him to A-Rod, comped him to Machado. Beautiful swing. Everyone was dreaming on him. He goes to rookie ball, 175 plate appearances, 3 home runs, 677 OPS. Now everyone's off, right? I think he was number 14 in the Cubs organization in BP. I think that's crazy. I think if you saw the talent in Christian Hernandez going into 22 as a 17-year-old, then that talent doesn't change as an 18-year-old playing in rookie ball, right? And not only are, so his stats weren't great, but nothing about him, if you really dig in the write-ups, nothing about him changed. Same swing, same player, same comps. He just had another year under his belt of development. So I love him. I started to dig a bit more. I watched his swing. He's got such a smooth, beautiful swing. So we talked about like Marcelo Mayer having a nice swing. We talked about Jackson Holiday having a beautiful swing. I think Hernandez has a beautiful swing like Holiday does, but with more explosion, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's a tad bit more athleticism with him. He's a faster runner. He's got a super quick bat. It's interesting because he has like the wide hips like Machado does. So I wonder if he fills out in a way that maybe moves him to third. But boy, I also see him adding a lot of strength on his frame that's already strong. Is what I have for him, the line that I have for him that's the most telling is, I said, if it all comes together, he's a 10-time All-Star who has more fantasy upside than anyone on this list. It's a wait and see, right? You're talking about a 19-year-old who's only played in rookie ball. So
now his speed has been downgraded, right? He's not as fast as people thought.
Yeah, so I have
What do you
him
have his speed at?
I have him at 55. I think it's probably currently a 60. And I think that it may actually end up at probably a 50, just given that I see physical projection for him. But I see a 300, 375, like almost 550 hitter in the middle of a lineup that could hit 35 home runs. Right? He's got that kind of swing and that kind of talent. And that puts him in the Machado area. I love him. I love him. I have him at 7 because he's young and because we haven't seen it from him. This is all projection, which is why I can't put him above, Wynn or Mayer or some of the other players. But man, he's special. His swing is special.
Yeah, so we're agreeing a lot on this one. I need to be more controversial next time. Or maybe we're just getting better at this and being consistent, right?
Right.
So I have him at 9. I included him on my list as well. Interestingly enough, Baseball America didn't drop him too much. He's not on their top 100, but he's still in the top 10 for the Cubs. He's at 7, and that's a damn good system too. And they upped his power. So he's currently, and this isn't just potential, he's currently at 60 power for them. So they're seeing him fill out. They tend to be conservative on hit as far as players that are coming up. He's at 50 hit right now, but even his showing in his 2 showings, he was 75 hit. I mean, 75 contact and decent walk rate as well. So and that's what they said about him too. He's a mature, good hitter, knows his zone well, I should say. So yeah, I like him a lot. And I think he was just listed, I think BA had him as players to watch this year too, that could surge very quickly, because this is going to be his first time in A ball and stateside in A ball. So yeah, I see the same things that you do. And these international prospects, it's like, you can't just say these are great talented players and then because they have a showing in Dominican League that isn't like this sexy, wonderful showing that they all of a sudden stink, right? You got to stick with the grades and be confident, and then see how they're going to do in A ball and when they come stateside, and keep them at those grades, right?
I think it's scary for folks I'm guessing it's scary for folks to project too much, right? Risk too much of their reputation on a player too early, which is why everybody wants to see more and more and more history on a player. But at that point, if you've got a ton of history on a player, it's no longer projection, right? There's no payoff because everyone else can see the same thing. The payoff, or the real kind of talent, is to identify a player and their skill as early on as you possibly can, and then invest in that player.
Hmm.
We see it in our home leagues. We see it everywhere, right? There are fantasy managers who want to know that the player is going to be great before investing. And then there's the fantasy managers, kind of like us, who just take a whole bunch of risks and figure that if you hit on a couple of them, all of a sudden you've got Ronald Acuna and Julio Rodriguez on your team, right?
Hmm.
To me, that's how you win championships. That's just my own philosophy. But Christian Hernandez is one of those guys, right?
Hmm.
He's someone who's not going to cost you that much currently, unless someone is full-heartedly holding on to him
Hmm.
and denying every ludicrous trade that you offer for the guy. It's 5 times worth the player. Anyways, we're not going to go into that. But he's worth the risk, right? He's worth having on your team as long as you have a fairly deep minor league system, because you might have a superstar.
Hmm.
But yeah, it drives me nuts that one year we're totally in on him. You get 100 plus plate appearances from a kid who's adjusting to life in the United States,
Hmm.
who has a tremendous amount of pressure on him, who's not eating foods that we talked about this a million times, not eating foods he's used to, family's probably not around, new friends, new everything. And he doesn't really struggle. He's just not a superstar yet.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Hmm.
mean he's not going to be great. It just means it might take some time.
Hmm.
And I think American prospects have a huge advantage because they're not making the same cultural adjustment.
Hmm. And the Cubs are another great system too that's going to develop them well.
Yep, they're smart.
So who do you have at 8?
My 8 is Edwin Arroyo,
Okay.
shortstop prospect, Cincinnati Reds, 19-year-old switch hitter. Who are we missing in your top 8?
I have who you had at second last time, so I have Peraza at 8.
You do. Okay, so let's start with
And Arroyo just
Arroyo.
missed he just missed my list, so he's
Got
not.
it. So 6 feet, 175, drafted in the second round, 48th overall by the Mariners out of Puerto Rico in 2021. He was traded with Noelvi Marte and some others for Luis Castillo near the deadline last year. He is a high floor player. I have his risk as mid, but has mostly to do with the other shortstop prospects in the system than it does what I think he's going to be able to do. High floor, probably lower ceiling than most prospects on this list, has some power, has some speed, will stick at shortstop, whatever organization he plays in, because he is I wouldn't call him a gold glove shortstop, but I think he's a very consistent, above average shortstop. Short swing, he's wiry strong. He's very, pretty skinny guy. He's not beanpole skinny, but he's just wiry, right? Very little fat on his body. Quick bat, coordinated, skilled. He looks like a big league regular, right? And there aren't a lot of deficiencies in his game. I think his hit tool is slightly above average. The question is he going to be able to get to some power, right? The wiriness, the strength in him, in his wrists says to me there is 20 home run upside. So he could be like a 2015 type of guy with a pretty high average. And depending on where he hits in the lineup, he's not giving you 100 runs or 100 RBIs, but he could give you 80 if he hit second, right? But there's a lot of ifs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ifs for him with me. I think that his power will determine whether he's fantasy starter relevant or whether he's more of like a middle infielder in leagues that have a middle infield slot. But he's not going to hurt you, right? I would rather he than a 25 home run, no steal shortstop. I'd rather Arroyo over a 30 still over like a Miles Straw type of dude, right? I think he's not going to hurt you anywhere. He's just doesn't have the elite talent that some others do. As a real life player, I love him. I was obviously most sad that Noelvi Marte was traded, but I was certainly sad that Arroyo went in that trade as well. I really do like him as a prospect. The other thing is you can apply the same idea with to Arroyo that you did with Tovar and Wynn, in that they could potentially be accumulators because their defense is going to keep them in the lineup every day. You have anything to add with Arroyo?
I was just going to say the same thing as far as he's in that grouping that's going to be a contributor with counting stats and in a great ballpark as well.
Yep. All right, so
I
Peraza,
have
we touched on
Peraza, yeah,
earlier.
we talked about last time. Since last time I dug a little deeper, and I'm a little higher on him. I did critique his swing and miss because he struggled with it a little bit last year. But if you look at his overall minor numbers, he's at 78% contact rate, which is better on this. So some of the better, it is the second best number on my board,
Mm-hmm.
next to Holiday, who had minimal at bats. The issue is with his eye. He had 8% walk rate, so he is kind of a aggressive contact hitter. I like his speed as well. He's a sneaky base runner. He's going to take advantage of the new rules, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and his skill in defense is going to keep him playing. So my comp, he's a faster stop for me. And here's why I give this comp, because he's going to be batting at the end of a very good lineup, just like Stott, and he's going to be turning over that lineup, but he's going to have the speed that Stott doesn't necessarily have. Stott's going to still steal 10 to 20 bags,
Mm-hmm.
but Peraza has a speed to eclipse that by a lot. I think he could have anywhere from 20 to 40 if he plays every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's a great buy, especially if you're going to look at somebody like Stott to fill in. You got to go for Peraza more than Stott, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Would you be comfortable with Oswald Peraza as your starting shortstop?
No, but I
At his
would be
peak.
comfortable as my starting second baseman, though.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how he's eligible right now in Fantrax, but if he gains and holds a second base eligibility, yes, he's
Mm-hmm.
a solid second baseman.
Cool.
He's not going to hurt you.
Who's your number 10?
My number 10, I'm going to be a homer here with my hat. Feldman Celestine. Is it Celestine? Celestine, right? Celestine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 6'1", 175. Already at maybe 55s across the board. 55 hit, 55 power, 55 speed. Of course, that could increase. Those are more or less guesses on what scouts are seeing right now. Quite young. What impressed me is what scouts are saying. A direct quote from a scout here: highest ceiling of any international prospect in a decade. Clearly has 5-tool potential. So unlike maybe Christian Hernandez, he may not have the developing power, but he is going to be faster, and he does have that 5-tool potential across the board. Just an outstanding athlete, and I'm confident in what the Mariners are starting to do in development in their low minors, and he's going to fit right in. So I see him as one of these great, and just like Hernandez, these great high ceiling investments, and I wouldn't blame anybody for reaching in an FYPD in the first round for him, because he's right up there with the college athletes or the high school athletes that were drafted by MLB this year.
I think I did take him in the first round in one of our leagues.
Oh, you did? Yeah,
and I
that's
think
right. Yeah.
Did you take him first round or second round?
I took him second round in the
I
other
was
league.
upset you sniped me on that one. It was definitely my target. I think I took Dylan Lesko over him, and that's why
Oh,
I
yes.
missed out. I love him. He's on my short list, just outside of the top 10. If this was just a ceiling ranking, he would certainly be in my top 10. But he's still a wait and see. My number 10 is Zach Neto, first round pick of the Los Angeles Angels in 2022, 13th overall, 6 feet, 195, right-handed hitter. He'll be entering his age 22 season. This upcoming year, he played high A and double A ball, which was aggressive. After being drafted, 167 plate appearances. He had 5 home runs, 5 steals, 853 OPS. Boy, have you watched his swing?
Yes. It's interesting, to say the least.
He's it's like a flamingo. Is it flamingo, the animal that kind of goes up on one leg? So he
Yeah.
gets up almost up on one leg because his leg kick, his stride is so pronounced, right?
Hmm.
And he kind of his weight shift is huge, kind of into the ball as he's
Hmm.
swinging. In theory, he shouldn't make contact as much as he does because his swing is so wild and different. But he had a 19.8% K rate. He's got elite hand-eye coordination. Uh, what I have just under thoughts, I just have leg kick is weird, poor man's Volpe. I called him a poor man's Volpe because I think he will have he'll hit for some power and he will steal some bases and his numbers will play up past his athleticism because I don't see him as a premium athlete. So he'll provide steals and home runs. I just don't think has the ability that Anthony Volpe does. For me, he was 55s across the board, hit, power, speed, and discipline. But the mechanics scare me. The swing mechanics scare me, as does the small school pedigree. I believe he went to Campbell and was a little bit higher of a pick than some people anticipated. So very unorthodox player, right? Not the same sort of swing, not the same swing as Hunter Pence, but it gave me the same reaction, which
Hmm.
is what the hell is he doing? But he makes
Hmm.
contact, right?
Hmm.
I also don't believe in the Angels' ability to develop hitting prospects. And so if he's going to develop, a lot of it's going to be on his own.
Hmm.
So he's number 10. I think I could have put any of the other, I've got on my list, I have Adele Amador, Jose Salas, Jet Williams, Cole Young, Eric Brown, Felnine Celestin. I have all those guys on Royce Lewis, right? They're all just below the top 10 for me. You could put any of those in number 10 and I'd be fine with it. I do think Zach Neto is going to be a decent shortstop.
Hmm.
And I'm looking at, maybe 15-10 with a decent average, which is fantasy relevant, but not fantasy championship relevant.
Hmm. And he'd be decent at second base if he
Mm-hmm.
was over there,
For sure.
but not as shortstop,
Do you have
especially in.
anything else, anything to add or any comment maybe on the overall state of this position?
It's solid. I remember when I first started playing fantasy baseball, that shortstop was you had to go and grab your shortstop because it was rare.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's turned into a gold mine, I think, and it's another strong class. So this is one where I didn't have to search for bottom of the list players. I had to cut players from
Right.
my list.
Do you have do you have a favorite fantasy shortstop in this list? And do you have a favorite real life shortstop in this list?
Yeah, good question. So my favorite fantasy I would just have to say Ellie, because who knows what's going to happen there.
Mm-hmm.
There's it's easy for me to say that because I don't have him on any of my teams.
Sure.
So I'm not taking that risk, but it's going to be fun to see if he does explode.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be mad at the owners that do have him. So he could potentially be a 30-30, 40-40 guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, they just interviewed O'Neal Cruz, and he said he's aiming at 30-30, 40-40 this year. He has to hit lefties better. That was the comment that was made
Right.
on the site. But still, I just like that energy, right? These players are fun to watch. And then Holiday and Volpe I think are the ones you can't miss on, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I would like them on my team. I would like Volpe on my team just because he has that it. He's Derek Jeter too, right? And yeah. So how about you?
I think my favorite fantasy shortstop is I put Volpe and Christian Hernandez. Christian Hernandez because I think he has the highest upside. As I said, Volpe because he's got 30-30 potential, which is insane at shortstop. He's also half Filipino, which I am
Mm,
too. And I love that. I love that about him. That's something that because there's so few players who are Filipino, Lincecum, who else? There's one other I'm not thinking of. I think Benny Agbayani maybe, but
mm,
I love that. So Volpe and Christian Hernandez as far as fantasy goes, and I'm so excited for Mason Wynn. you know, he's a highlight reel, I think, waiting to happen. And I don't love the Cardinals, but he's reason for me to watch. I love the position. I'm comfortable with any of the players in my top five: Volpe, Merrill, Holiday, Mayer, Wynn. In the short term, I think any of those players are going to be our championship type players. So super fun position. Super fun. Anything else to add?
I think that's it. I
Cool,
think we have
man.
less than a minute left, and we're gonna get cut off. Huh?
That's right. This was a good one. I love it.
All right,
All
enjoyed
right,
it,
buddy.
man.
You too.
Take it easy.
All right.